So why don't we, when you do the roll call, Pam, and then we can read the notice and we can open the public hearing.
Sure. Gerard Ahern,
Present?
Liz Hutchins,
Here.
Brian Holmes,
Here.
Bradley Reed,
Here.
Gabrielle Lamano,
Here.
and then we have Andy Kishitz as absent.
Yeah, okay. So, Gabrielle's one of ours, she's our associate. So for this hearing, we'll have her as the voting member. Does it have to be done by vote, or we just designate that, Pam?
My experience has been by vote.
Okay, so the motion to designate Gabrielle as the voting member.
I'll motion to designate Gabrielle as voting member.
Okay,
Second.
thanks. Do you want to do a roll call on that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Gerard Ahern,
yes.
Liz Hutchins,
Yes.
Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Bradley Reed,
Yes.
Okay,
no. Motion passes 4-0.
okay. So can you bring up the meeting notice?
Sure, hold on one second.
Thanks. Take your time.
Sorry, I'm having a.
And if not, I can probably wing it based on some notes I took.
I'll grab it 1 second. It
Okay.
wasn't with the. I'm trying to pull. I have the paper copy. I don't have the electronic copy.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Oh, perfect. So, if you, let's see if I move these over a little bit. There you go. So in accordance with Master and Law, Chapter 48, Section 11, and Chapter 41, notice is hereby given that the zoning board of appeal will hold a public hearing on Thursday, September 7th, 2013 at 7:30 p.m. via Zoom to act upon the application of Bolton Office Park parking regulations to allow for the reduction from 414 parking spaces to 129 parking spaces. The property is located at 580 Main Street, map 4C, parcel 24.0, and is in the limited business district of the town of Bolton. So with that, the meeting's open, and who do we have representing the applicant?
Hi, I'm Jeff O'Neill, one of the principals and the owners of the property at 580 Main Street. On the line with me as well is Brandon Carr from DePret Engineering, and both Matt Snell and Aaron Iroquois from Nutter.
Okay, perfect. Hello, folks.
Great. So thank you. So I'd say the intro is a little bit confusing when you think we're going from 414 spaces down to 129, but there's a process for us to get there. As you recall, in March of 2022, the board approved the development of what we term as the comprehensive permit project, which is the 229 unit residential development, which is going on our southern part of the lot.
Right.
And then as part of that development, what was always just kind of termed it would be done was a renovation and partial demolition of the existing office building.
Mhm.
And that was there to make way for the residential development behind us. So that's where we are today. The two parcels, the smaller one where the office remains is 6.5 acres plus or minus, and the rear one is about 32.5 acres where the comprehensive permit is. So the project before the board tonight is what we're terming as the remaining office project, which proposes the reduction of the existing 140,000 square foot building where you see it in two pods in front of you on the drawing there presented, to plus or minus 60,000 square feet, which will remain. And of that 60,000 square feet, we're proposing 129 spaces for parking at this point in time. So we are requesting a special permit by the zoning bylaw to reduce the required number of spaces for the remaining office building that will remain to about 129. If Brandon, you can go to the next page of the drawings.
Yeah, excuse me, Pam, do you mind if I share my screen? We have a couple slides that kind of coincide with what Jeff is. I'm able to share my screen. It's
Thank
gonna
you.
be- All right, perfect.
Perfect.
Good, so this is the the elevation that will be facing the residential development. So as we cut off in demo the existing two-story pod on that side, this is how we're going to end and cap the wall and open up that office space to that lobby area. If you want to go to the next page, Brandon. So overall, this describes the two lots we're discussing on the global aerial. You can see the smaller one, approximately 6.5 acres, and the larger one about 32.5 acres.
Great.
So here is, if you took a look at the residential development behind us, you can see a separation of the two lots where the comprehensive permit's going. And on that lot line, you can see traverses through the pod of the second office building. So and if you recall that the site was originally designed way back when Flatley developed it for 2 additional office pods beyond what was there. And that large rear parking lot, which is down on the southern side of the residential development, will be going away. So what we're trying to do is consolidate all the parking that would be located at the main entry of the front of the building. And if you go to the next slide, we can show you what that looks
Can you go
like.
back for a second on that? So when you say that parking, so the parking that you just sort of highlighted with your a second circle, you're saying that's going away? Is that not part of the comprehensive permit parking?
That is correct. Other than the spaces that you can see that are overlaying that whole section where Brandon's arrow is would be removed in that area. So that was originally designed for all of the 4 office pods when Flatley was developing the site.
Okay, so that's not associated with the current 40B.
Yeah, so that's the existing parking lot that I kind of just sketched out, and this is the 40B overlaid. You can see that parking lot is for the 40B. That's proposed, but the majority of the parking is going away.
Okay,
Yeah, well, as
okay. I just want to
remember,
make sure that there
that's
wasn't something changing from the 40B that, you know.
No, nothing's changing. So
Thank you.
what happened as part of the 40B process, it seemed
field
like
protection
everyone was.
area, correct?
Yes,
Yeah, so there's no parking in that well field protection area. That's 100-foot buffer.
that's correct. That's correct.
Okay, yep.
So that's kind of an overview. If you can see the residential with the office pod. And then you can see the existing office building, which is this is existing conditions, what's present on site now. So as you can see, the 2 pods with the center entrance, there is a rear service driveway to access the rear of the building. And pretty much you can see the limited parking that's up front.
Right.
So if we go to the next slide, you can get an idea. So these are the 2 pods. Now just orienting yourself a little bit differently. So the drawing was switched, so you can see the remaining gray. The remaining gray is the area that will remain on site, which is kind of 2 and partial half story. that's there. And then the green, which is highlighted, will be removed and demolished. And
Okay.
the blue line is the property line that separates the two lots between the rear development and the front development. So what we're proposing is to reduce the parking for what remains at the office to 129 spaces, consolidate, redo the parking lot, and make it everyone that's in the front entry, so controlling all the access to the facility. The existing building that will remain is termed, it's plus or minus 60,000 square feet. However, our leasable square feet, which once we back out stairwells, restrooms, the lobby, the electric room, sprinkler room, and things like that, is plus or minus 40,000 square feet. So according to the zoning bylaw, we need one space for every 250 feet. So if we did it based on the 60,000 square feet, we'd be needing 240 spaces, which is twice the size of the parking lot that's there, versus the leasable square feet where our tenants are located and occupying is about 160 spaces. So based on our history and ownership for the past 16 years of the asset, we feel somewhat comfortable that the proposal of the 129 spaces is appropriate for the demand of the tenants and everyone that is there in the process. So pursuant to the zoning bylaw, the ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals, can grant a special permit upon the finding that it's not practicable to build the total number of parking space required on the site. In this case, changing from one conforming use to another conforming use, and that the lack of parking spaces will not create undue congestion to the traffic hazards of the area.
Right.
So
That's the second for, if the board hasn't refreshed looking at that section 250 17.
Correct.
There were two conditions, two scenarios, one being a non-conforming to conforming, and then the second was conforming to conforming, and it's an either or, if it meets either one of them. So he's correct in citing that second one.
Okay, thank you. And in addition to that, the rear of the site on the backside, so we are in front of both the conservation board. So we've already been in front of conservation, and we are waiting on DEP comments to issue their file number, which I guess we're backed up at the state level. So we're waiting. We're number 7 project supposedly. But at the rear of the site, there is quite a bit of riverfront that doesn't allow us to go back there. So the only access to the rear of the site is our driveway there, and that's a service driveway only to get into the loading dock that's at the rear of the building. So in addition to that, we're making all sorts of improvements to the parking, the drainage, and also some of the conservation area that we're protecting at the rear of the site. So in addition to the Conservation Commission, we're in front of the Planning Board, which is supposed to be in front of next week. Pam, welcome aboard. So it's nice to meet you. So we're in front of those two boards as well. And the Select Board has issued the authorized approval for the Planning Board to make decisions on the special permit related to site plan approval. So back when this was originally developed, it was approved by the Select Board, and now they're directing it to the Planning Board.
Okay. Now, have you had any opportunity to bring in the design review board on the parking matter or not?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, they were integral in reviewing the 40B item, or aspect of the project. So, if as you're going through the boards, that you may get referred to, have them look at it, but I'm not sure that it's a requirement. But they've been favorable to the project, to the overall project. So I don't perceive they'd have any problems with the current parking proposal.
Okay. And in addition to that, all the zoning and setbacks will be met with the building that's to remain. So there are no changes whatsoever to, property line setbacks or request of relief for those areas as well. And the uses will change, is not changing as well. So all we're here is to request a special permit in order to reduce the parking down to 129 spaces for plus or minus the square footage of leasable area to remain.
So,
I have a quick question and a comment. I'm concerned with the reduction of parking spaces in that, you know, we have a limited footprint here, so I understand there's no place to put the extra cars, but we have a 229 unit apartment complex next door, and they're going to require parking. And I'm concerned that the number of employees, we don't know how many employees whoever leases this property is going to have. And as a condition of this variance, I would like to see some kind of limitation to the number of employees that could be employed by anyone using this property to maybe 100 employees, so that we don't have people parking the elderly development next door or out on the street or across the street at the operation over there. Because I go to a place in Concord which has exactly that problem. They don't have enough spaces. It's a medical facility. There's lots of people running in and out of the complex all day. And if you get there at the wrong time, there's no place to park and there's no place convenient that doesn't impinge somebody else's. So would you accept some kind of a condition that the number of employees of anyone leasing the property would be limited?
I think that's a pretty strong hardship to request on in restricting any sort of potential tenant that would be coming to the town of Bolton. Now, we do understand and are cognizant of the types of tenants, but the uses that were allowed in the building are very limited in its first place. So, you know, for instance, we're not expecting a call center to come in here where people are stacked up on every single cubes all over the place. That's never been this place and never been this office.
How
So
about a
this
medical
office
facility? Something like one of these medical facilities where they have a whole bunch of doctor's offices and they have big peak periods of people coming in for treatment or for diagnosis or other things. I mean, that's what I'm talking about over in Concord. And basically there's no place to put the cars.
I believe under the existing zoning, a medical use would require a special permit. If I think that's correct. Is that, Matt, are
concerned
you
with the thing?
I think that's correct. I was just looking to confirm that actually as I was being.
So if we had that type of tenant and the type of use that would be coming in, you would have a look at it and approval of that at that time.
So what kind of facilities or what kind of organizations are able to rent this out right now? Is it defined somehow?
Right now, it's through your limited business district uses that are there. And primarily, it's mostly office users that are inside the space now.
So what type of restrictions, like for example, as managing the property, as tenants start coming back from, say, the post-pandemic, and you start to, I don't know how much of the is already leased out or what we'll be leasing, what the ramp up is, but at what point will you know that, okay, we've got potential for that parking to be maxed, and will there be instructions to people that they're prohibited from parking at the senior center, or they're prohibited from parking?
We can definitely set those rules and regulations in place, and we can also encourage associated TDM measures with the existing tenants to use and carpool and find a way to use public transportation available in closest areas. And as to your initial question,
transportation. So you either have to carpool or walk. I mean, those are the deals. You know, this is not on the T, and so that's basically, there's no bus service. So you know, once the problem develops, we're going to have to live with it, and I'm not happy with that.
I think it's also important to consider that, like, the way people work now is quite different, and there is a lot of remote activity ongoing. And again, I don't know what type of organizations are in this building, but I know for a fact where I work, our parking lots are almost empty now because there's a lot of remote work, which I know is not something you can necessarily stipulate or guarantee, but it's just something to kind of consider in that. So I don't know you know, how we could tie that in, but I just think it's something to consider.
Yeah.
While more people
Yeah.
are going back to work, it is a very different situation now, and some people aren't coming in 5 days a week.
Right, it's a
Correct.
hybrid model. Mhm.
Right, we agree with that, but we could also put something in the rules and regs that encourages some level of remote work. We can't dictate what the companies want to do for their operations, but there's no reason
No.
we can't put something in there suggesting those types of operations. So
What can you do though to advertise that they're not to park outside of your property?
signage could be placed both at the exit and on the entry level.
Mhm.
So we have no issue with that whatsoever, but we do it on our property, not on the comprehensive permit property.
Well, no, that's what we're trying to prevent, because
Yeah.
even on that property, I don't know, when it gets full leased up, with the multiple types of units, I mean, they, believe that the parking they sought and got permitted will be sufficient, but that property is going to be so much more dramatically used between the two parcels now, that I don't want, I guess we are somewhat hesitant to create a nightmare where no one has place to park and people are, passing back and forth, trying to get into a spot and creating concerns where neighbors are not favorable to the business because they're saying, hey, people are parking in our spots, or vice versa,
Right, understood. So I just,
Jeff-
we've
Jeff,
owned the
if I
building,
may.
we've owned the building since 2006,
Mhm.
2007. And out of the occupants in the building, I don't think we've ever had more than 100 vehicles at this location any given day.
Mhm. And that's when it
And
was twice the size, you're saying?
when it's 140,000 square feet, yes.
Right, yeah. Mhm. So, yeah.
If I may, Jeff, one thing to consider if the board needed a condition on the parking management, and again, sorry for the record, I'm Matt Snell from Nutter Counsel for the owner. Something we've done in other projects where we reduced the parking is have a condition, along the lines that the owner will manage parking to ensure that there's no parking off-site and off-street, and will include something potentially in the lease that requires the tenant to inform their employees that they have to park, these are the parking areas, they can't park in the street and so forth. And so that
Right.
way it does kind of answer the question that you raised that, how is the owner getting to individual employees when they're not dealing with them? And it puts a little bit of the onus on the tenant, but not so draconian as to say you cannot have this many employees or things when in fact I think the point that was raised about the change in workplaces is a good one.
Mhm.
And
On
Jeff,
the,
I mentioned that as an option, but
No, I think
Correct.
that's
Mhm.
certainly good to think about. How about on these parking spaces? I know on the affordable housing process with part of the parking, they were going to be parking spots as well, where the vehicles are moving gas to electric, or is there going to be any type of resource for electric vehicles there?
I
Charging
believe,
or whatnot?
Brandon, I believe we have a couple of EV stations that are located there, if I'm correct.
Yeah, if they're not called out on the plans, Brandon Carr from Dupree Engineering.
Mhm.
This type of use in the past 3 or 4 projects I've done with Condyne, they do build EV charging.
Mhm.
There's some regulations that you have to adapt a certain amount, which we've done in this instance. I think the requirement is that up to 25% of your parking has to be EV adaptable, which, you'll run conduit to it. The layout of this, the majority of the parking faces landscaping. There's only the one row here that's head to head. So you have a lot of opportunities to add more chargers in the future. And during construction, we would add conduits to those islands so they could be easily added in the future. But that is something that's obviously, one, it's a tenant amenity in a way. But also, we're building this parking lot and building so that it's built for purpose for the next 40 years without having to be able to add things like that and amenities, because in 20 years that could be, a requirement for 50% of the cars. So we don't want to set ourselves up so that we have to, redo the parking lot every 10 years. So there would most likely be some, 4 to 5 EV spaces from day one, and then, the rest of the parking lot's laid out to easily adapt to add more.
Okay, so it's been considered. That's good.
For sure.
One other quick question here. If the parking becomes a problem and there are people parking in, the development across the street or willing to build a parking garage,
I can't speak for Wood Partners, but if we have a demand or a tenant that requires that number of spaces and we can't accommodate them, yes, we would accommodate a parking garage.
Yeah. So
I have a question. So I just don't know the answer. Is our bylaw based on the rentable square footage or the overall square footage?
it's every 250 feet, I believe,
Overall,
of building.
So
Right.
it's based on overall. So it's based on the full 60,000, not what's
Correct.
not what's actually rentable. Okay. And so for 60,000 square feet, it would require what was the number again?
250, so it's 240. Sorry, Jeff.
It's 240, and then but you made a comment that obviously the rentable square feet is only 42,000 square feet. So what would that equate to?
it's 160.
Okay, and this proposes 129,
29.
130 basically. Okay, so we're talking about like 31 spots as far as rentable square footage is considered. Okay.
I mean, I'm just thinking if I were the developer or the building owner, I would be thinking not to create a problem where we'd have to be going back to tenants and sort of over micromanaging them because we didn't anticipate the parking, so I have some preference to rely on the business case that, as you say, you've been in business or been with that site since 2006, 2007. So, almost 20 years, and the business, the environment. So, without having some study done that said, this is how we get a number, I would think that you're advocating for what you believe would be somewhat a worst case syndrome, so you wouldn't be having problems with your tenants or with the abutters.
Correct. We don't want to restrict anything that would be problematic for us, and we're confident based on the uses and our history of ownership, and going forward, what we're seeing in the market for the types of tenants that the parking demands that are needed.
Yeah.
So, and please note, I mean, we're doing what we can do on our side to make way for the comprehensive permit, make sure that project proceeds as well. So I think they're waiting on their final permits. I think Army Corps was the last one they were waiting on. So I believe they did get that as of recently.
Right. And so all deliveries would be at the back, so they wouldn't be taking up front parking spaces and things like that?
That is correct. So there's a loading dock that's in the back that has an access drive with an easement through the comprehensive permit project that goes into the back and the rear of the building. Right at that location.
So they would come down here, then back into the building there.
Yep. So that would be signage most likely to.
Correct. There's going to be
that
directional signage on site that would direct any sort of that type of delivery there, via FedEx, UPS, one of those types of trucks or whatever.
And
And-
how about like for moving, like office moving and storage and things like that, as you start to ramp up, is all that done through the back as well?
Yes, yes, it's able to accommodate, certain size truck to get in there.
Okay.
I think
Male,
Clients do
Brandon.
you see? Just what type of clients do you see coming to you now for space? Just so we can get an idea of where this market's going.
Today, they're smaller office users. I mean, they're anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 square feet. We have a couple of great tenants in there now. In addition, I think, a little bit of the, not co-working space, I should say that, but, smaller individual offices would be locating there as well. So it has that great visibility and a great appearance, but and great access to the highway being on 495, but it's not a very large office market. So it's kind of a niche, smaller tenant that someone wants to be in that area.
Okay, thank you.
And I was just going to add, Jeff, Brandon, it might be helpful on this particular slide that you have out. You can show where the wetland resources area and things and why it's not practical to further expand the parking. And
Yeah, so I just get the pencil again. So obviously this is our proposed lot. I'm just going to delete this so I can draw. This is a existing detention basin. So it kind of takes up the front, that big landscape area. Then there's a brook on this side of the property that runs through here. There's wetlands here. So this is the 200-foot riverbank. Kind of does that. So you can see between the riverbank, which, we're not proposing any new impervious within, and that's why we're before Concom, because we're doing some utility work in the back of the building. Not looking to expand into that. So the existing detention basin there, it really just leaves kind of this portion of the site here, which is where we're, maximizing the parking there. So, without getting into substantial wetlands and Army Corps permitting, it really isn't feasible to add more parking on the front lot there.
Right.
I think it's just going to be really key to make sure that any tenants that come in understand the potential limitations. And as was mentioned before, kind of put the onus a little bit on those organizations coming in. I know I used to work in Cambridge, and obviously parking in Cambridge is a hot mess. So one of the things that we knew going in there was, this is what you have available for parking. So when we would, hire new people on, we were like, we're not going to have parking for you, and you kind of have to figure it out. So it's a business risk. But again, when you're looking for space for your organization, that's something that you have to consider. So I think being really transparent about that is going to be what's critical. Because if somebody comes in and you're like, we don't have enough parking spots, right? Or we have XYZ parking spots, you're kind of making sure that they know that. And then again, if it does become a problem, as I understand, that's something that would kind of come back here, right? And we would have to figure out how to deal with that. Is that what I understand? Like if there was a lot of issue and people were parking in the other locations or parking on 117 or something like that, that would kind of come back to us, and we'd have to kind of have this discussion again.
Well, I don't think that's the case. Once we grant this variance, they've got the variance, and then we have to deal with the mess. So the police are going to have to tow and tag cars and take them out of there, or they're going to have to get a bus and find some auxiliary parking place somewhere. But no, once we sign off on this, they can do it, and we're stuck. So yeah, I'm not comfortable with it, what I've heard, but I don't know how anyone else feels, but
I mean, I think with the condition that they reference, Brad, with some type of occasion for on parking management, that ensure that they're not it's up to the site to ensure people are not parking off property on the street or whatnot, then if someone's violating that, you know, egregiously, I mean, someone may inadvertently park somewhere in a quick fix, and I don't think that would create a problem. But if it became the norm versus an exception, that if that condition's in there, then someone could, you know, go to the building inspector, say, hey, they're not abiding by that condition, and that would come back to us because there's a condition in the special permit that said that they had to manage that aspect.
Yeah, well,
And-
I guess I want to see some language in there that puts a few constraints on it. That's all I'm asking for, so that,
Mhm.
you know, we don't end up with a mess and the police come to us, what did you do? And, we, you know, we don't need that.
Yeah, Gerard, I agree with your recommendation that we include that stipulation. I think the lawyer had also mentioned that it can go, something that can go in the lease that
Mhm.
basically states that. I think that would be good for me.
Right. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you know, it's not our job to manage their project or their, you know, their business or constricted in this, but, and as I said, my faith is that they're, you know, looking at it as worst case and knowing that what they think they're proposing is going to be adequate for the current period and as they say, as they project into the future. So, you know, it'd be hard, you know, wouldn't be good, behoove them to not be thinking that way. So I think, you know, the reduction in the space, the leasable space versus the overall space, I think that's, you know, I mean, that's where the cars are going to come from, the leases. And then if we put in that condition of some type of parking management language, then, you know, I think we do our best to look out for the town residents that are going to be abutting it, and then also for the future employees within the town.
Okay. So we can make a condition to the rules and regs that we make sure that that's done between the two properties.
Mhm. So when you say condition within the reg, so that would be
In the two parcels, the comprehensive permit parcel and
Yep.
our parcel,
Mhm.
there is a to be developed easement agreement that traverses both properties. And as part of that easement agreement, there are certain rules and regs that both properties have to abide by, i.e.
Okay.
landscaping, traffic, directional signage, things like that.
Okay. So then if we were to entertain a motion to approve the special permit, there would be a condition that a condition that there would be a parking management condition within the to be developed easement agreement.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And when that agreement is finalized, would you be, I guess we'd want a copy of that so that we could see that was done.
We could, Matt, we can give that evidence. Isn't that correct? Yes, we
Yeah,
can provide that to them.
Yeah, that should be recorded, so it'll be a public document.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess, do we want to put stipulations about exactly what that language is? Because I don't necessarily know that we're like, put some language in there that makes sure that you maintain your parking. Like, I don't know how explicit we want to be about what that means.
My suggestion would be that we don't make a decision tonight, but that they come back with some kind of an agreement, which we can review and make comments on, and then we can vote the variance if it's appropriate.
Yeah, I think the condition can really just, if we're gonna put it there, that it's really, maybe it's two conditions. One, that the property owner will manage parking in conjunction with its tenants so as to prevent parking in streets or other parking areas off-site, which impacts the, the surrounding streets or neighboring or budding properties. And then second, that the owner will provide evidence that the restriction in the prior condition on parking off-site is included in an easement agreement to be entered into with the 40B effect. And will provide evidence of that when finalized and recorded. Prior to, I guess I repeat, prior to occupancy, prior to demolition being done, because we're at the full building permit and all of that stuff too.
Yeah, couldn't we just, if our board agreed, just make an agreement based on those conditions, rather than having that written up and coming back and reading that and then voting on it?
Yeah, I think, well, personally, yeah, those two sort of conditions that were just mentioned, that would suffice. I mean, because they couldn't do something unless we got the evidence that it was done. And then also that's what we're trying to do, is that the first condition is that the building owner would manage the parking, with the condition that tenants, are prohibited from parking, off-site or within the abutters properties. And then, that cover, sort of carries for me. And then it all has to get finalized. So if that easement gets finalized and that language is consistent, then, they will be within the, the purview of the approved special permit.
Yeah, I guess we can make it a condition of the, activating of the special permit that they provide a document to us. And then we approve it, and then they can go ahead with the process if we approve it. But
well, I think that approved it, or the easement would be recorded, right? Is that so we would get a copy of it, but
yeah, it has to be recorded. All right.
Right, but I think that so the condition, right? So we would be. I don't think we'd have to have a second hearing to review the documentation. We just want complete documentation that they're.
No, but that would be a condition of the approval, I guess.
Yeah. So does that sound workable to the applicant?
Yes,
couldn't
that does.
recall who was just speaking, who sort of highlighted those two
I
items.
think eloquently, Matt Snell, who's on, can probably put better verbiage than I can.
Right.
But I think you're on the concept of the two items. That's correct.
Right. Okay. So,
Luckily, you're recording it, so you had what I said, because I probably said it the best I'll ever say it.
that's what I was going to say. If we entertain a motion with the two conditions, we could have Pam review that recording and document that specific language so that it's concise as well as it was well spoken when it was outlined. Any other items to present or any other questions?
Not from us, no.
Okay. How about the board? Or is there any representatives from the town or other boards that joined into the Zoom that have any questions or comments? Other than that dog barking, I guess it's pretty good.
I apologize, that's my dog barking.
Well, that's okay. That's the beauty of Zoom. We get entertained. Okay. So do we have a motion to, with regard to this special permit request?
You want to make a motion to close the public hearing?
Oh, yeah, that, good, perfect. Sorry about that.
I can motion that we close the public hearing.
Second,
Thanks. You want to roll call that?
I'll do a roll call. Liz Hutchins,
yes.
Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Bradley Reed,
Yes,
Gabrielle Lamano,
Yes.
Gerard Ahern,
Yes. So. To. So I guess the next order would be if any other discussion, but if not, we'd motion to approve the special permit request to for 129 parking spots with the two conditions that were discussed and noted during the hearing.
I will make a proposal to approve the special permit for 129 parking spaces, subject to the provision of a parking regulation as is proposed during the meeting.
Yeah, those two conditions that were identified, Brad, right?
Correct, yep.
Yep. Okay.
Second,
Okay. Do you want to roll call that?
Yeah.
Pam?
Liz Hutchins,
yes.
Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Bradley Reed,
Yes,
Gabrielle Lamano,
Yes.
Gerard Ahern,
Yes. Okay. So that motion passes.
motion passes 5-0.
All right.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you, everyone.
Yep, the only other thing we need to do is where Pam is new to our process, we normally do a vote to authorize me to sign the final decision that she'll draft, but she'll route the draft so that people can review it. But if that's still the preference of the board, we would just need to do that. So,
Yeah, I will motion that. So I just need to make a motion that we approve Gerard to sign on the board's behalf.
Yep.
seconded.
That's, yeah, okay. Mhm. All right.
Liz Hutchins,
Yes.
Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Bradley Reed,
Yes,
Gabrielle Lamano,
Yes.
Gerard Ahern,
Yes, perfect. Okay. And then just, I guess a motion to close and we're done for the night.
I make
I
a
make a-
motion to
Go ahead.
close the meeting.
All right.
seconded.
And then we'll roll call that and we're done.
Liz Hutchins,
Yes.
Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Bradley Reed,
Yes,
Gabrielle Lamano,
Yes.
Gerard Ahern.
Yes. All right. Well, appreciate it, folks. And
Okay. Thank you very
again,
much.
thanks.
yep.
Thanks, Pam.
Good
Nice meeting-
night.
nice meeting
Have
you,
a good
Jeff.
night, everybody.
Yep.
You too.
See ya.